Hello, I'm Steve Fowler from the Occidental Center for the Arts, and I'm here with my old friend, Lolly Mesches, and we're going to talk about what we've been doing the last few years, which is to work very hard to get
to develop a
for
center, a home
all the arts.
That's exactly right.
In Occidental. And Lolly was there almost from the beginning, because it started with Doris Murphy back in the 90s, and you were friends at that point already.
Yes, I'd known Doris since 1961 when we moved to
1961.
Sonoma County. Yeah, and my husband and I used to visit Doris and Joe once or twice a year and buy a rhododendron from them, from their nursery, when we had our own wedding anniversary to celebrate. But I also knew Doris because we worked in the mental health field together. Not in the same agency, but...
Right, she was a social worker at Sonoma County for
That's
many
right,
years.
she was an administrative person.
Yeah.
And I didn't work for the county, I worked in the private sector. But in 2004, Doris invited me to become a member of the board of directors. And it was a good timing for me because after many years of working as a therapist and counselor, I'd gone back to work on my doctorate in psychology at the age of 55.
At the local university?
No, there was no such program locally, so it meant going to Berkeley.
Oh.
Not the university, but to a school called the California School for Professional Psychology, which was in Berkeley at the time and then moved to Alameda. And after learning a lot more than I thought I needed to know about neuropsychology and the brain functioning, although actually I'm glad I learned more about brain functioning, neurochemistry, neuroanatomy. When it was time to pick a topic for a dissertation, I really wanted to know more about the acting profession. I knew quite a bit about musicians and artists. And I began to think more and more about the kind of pleasure and joy that musicians and artists and actors provide for a number of people. So I became more curious about the personalities of the people who enter those areas. So I did quite a bit of reading as well as research, meeting with people and interviewing them.
So when you got started with the Occidental Center for the Arts, which was Doris's baby at that point, it was called the Occidental Center for the Performing and Visual Arts back then.
OCPAVA, yeah.
OCPAVA, yeah. You already had a running start because you were interested in the process of art and its therapeutic value.
That's right.
And you wanted to meet artists, and what better way than to start an art center?
Actually, I had met many in my office over the years, always in a very confined and restricted environment, talking about problems and pain and suffering, which is what people come to see a therapist for. So by getting involved with the center, I began to get a much fuller picture of the people, the many different ways in which people can be performers as well as workers, workers on the construction side of the site, or workers in creating scripts, creating drama, creating visual fine art. And I also did have an appointment at that time when I had some connection with the University of California at San Francisco with the Department of Psychiatry, and a program called Program for Performing Artists.
Okay, so this is in 2004.
Yes.
And at that point there was not a. Weren't you working on finding the money to build an art center at that point?
That was one of the issues. They had actually been given an opportunity to use some land diagonally across from where we are now.
Yeah, right on Dutch Bill Creek in
for
the
$1,
northern end of Occidental
yeah,
Town. Right, right.
And that in about 2004 is when the Thiessens, it wasn't just the husband, I'm sorry, I can't think of his name right now.
Orrin.
Orrin. But his wife also was very much involved because they both owned the land together. Orrin purchased the land, although I think at first the school was empty. by that
well,
time.
yeah, we got to make it clear that what he purchased was the old grammar school,
Harmony.
School, which had to close because of the decreased enrollment and the necessity to move to consolidate at a new campus near town called Salmon Creek School.
Yes. And it's a very upscale school when you know about
Yeah.
all the way what they use for building. So Harmony School and the surrounding land was for sale, and there were several different organizations that were considering it, but really nobody really wanted to take it on except Orrin did. And he had some very nice designs. He had worked in Grayton and made the little hamlet of Grayton look better.
Way better, yeah. He took Grayton got it into the 21st century.
Yes.
It had been really a backwater.
Pretty dismal looking before.
Right,
yeah.
no sidewalks. And he also had done the development at Windsor at that point. And that was a very, very big deal, and you can still go to the town green up there and see Orrin's work. So this was, as far as I know, his third development of a major project in Sonoma
And
County.
he said he was interested in the art center. His mother was an artist, so he liked the idea that as our art center combined with condominium development and houses, he liked that idea that this would be rather unique, an art center combined with living. It's not unusual in New York City, by the way. I've since learned that there are apartments that are really there for artists of various kinds.
Right, right. So this was the big sea change that you and Doris and the other board members at that time, I think Bill Batchelor was one of the board members.
That's right. Our board at that time was rather small. There were only
J.T. Devine was another one, wasn't
Yeah,
wasn't
he
JT
had just
involved?
then retired, but he had provided us with a beautiful design for a building.
Right, right. He's an architect,
Yes.
and he'd done a lot of work on a building that's never going to be built because it was
More expensive than we could afford.
right.
And also,
not necessary
we
anymore.
it wasn't necessary once the Thiesens, both Orrin and Terry, gave us this wonderful gift, part of Old Harmony School.
We should describe it. It was, since Orrin's plan in the development was to remodel the classrooms and not to tear them down, there was one big two-story structure that couldn't be converted, and but it was the multi-purpose room with 20-foot high ceilings and a kitchen, and he needed to show some public benefit in order to get the property rezoned. It made perfect sense to give the multi-purpose room to this arts organization, which had already been formed as a 501c3, so that there was some tax advantages, and then there was an adjoining classroom. So the gift consisted of the multi-purpose room and a classroom.
And the amphitheater.
And then there's an amphitheater
which
behind
is a
it.
lovely place.
It is. It's
Yes,
truly a
yeah,
nice amphitheater.
yeah.
It holds about 300 people, I think.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
steps are all in, so people can be either sitting on steps or on chairs on the steps.
Right,
And I
right.
understand the school used to hold its graduation out there.
Yeah.
So that was quite a gift. Until we received that, we used to meet at Doris's home, and other places, other homes were open for people to have fundraisers because they needed fundraising to pay for legal fees to get us unincorporated.
Right.
And
I think at that point you'd already bought a $20,000 feasibility study. Somebody made a substantial gift
yes,
to get
Well,
the feasibility
no, it
study.
wasn't one gift. There were a number of fundraisers that were done.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that made it so unique, is that it didn't fall on the shoulders of only one person, although Doris was a main, but so was Kit Newstetter, who was the director of the Redwood Arts Council,
Yeah.
who joined together, and she was part of that board.
Talk about Kit a little bit.
Yeah, Kit was a unique woman. I think that, as I understand it, she and her husband formed the Redwood Arts Council.
That's true.
Steve was her husband, who was an attorney, also had served in the Peace Corps at some point in his career. And Kit had a daytime job as a preschool teacher. But she also came from a very gifted family. I think her mother was a sculptor. I think her parents were divorced, but I think her father worked in radio in Chicago. I'm not sure. But that's, they are both have died since I joined in 2004.
Yeah.
Their two daughters are alive, and I'm sure they can give you a better picture of their parents.
Well, they must have had a deep love of chamber music, because Kit produced chamber music in Occidental for before her death about 4 years ago.
So it
She
was a good
produced
28, 29 years.
29 years
Yes.
of several concerts a year, mostly chamber music, and vastly enriched the community through all that work.
And she had a board of directors, which still exists. And our own coordinator, Candace Mackey, became the director for Redwood Arts Council.
That's right.
And has done a very good job.
So then
Kit and Doris worked together.
the impetus for the Art Center had to do with finding a home for the Redwood Arts Council, which was at that point using a church, one of the churches in Occidental. And the other local institution, the Occidental Community Choir, also had been going for a good 25 years at that point. And so they were thought of as the anchor tenants of any new
Development.
And so Kit was very active on the board right up to her death. And that was about 2005 or 6 or 7, I guess. I don't really know the date.
No, you know, as I've gotten older, time is passing so quickly. I really, I have a lot of vivid memories.
Well, I remember, so I joined the board in 2005. And we started working on converting the Thiessen Gift, the multi-purpose room, into a usable arts facility, and we couldn't really we couldn't really use the room at that point because it wasn't set up for
No, it
the
had,
sort of thing we wanted to do.
yes.
We had a couple of lights we would shine, and we built a little wooden. We got a band shell from Annalee High School, and we did a few concerts, but mostly in those years we had to produce our events, and we did produce events off-site. Remember that? Movies at Negri's. And
We had an Italian summer, one movie a month with a nice Italian meal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, that was
good.
fun.
And worked at the Union Hotel, sometimes at the Bocce Ballroom. And so
So we were able to reach out, and the community, many community businesses responded, like the Union Hotel and Negri's. And Cows Radio encouraged us to go ahead with advertising on there, and I became a member of Cows Radio
that's
as
right,
well.
we still do a show on Cows Radio.
Yes, every
Low Power FM.
That's right.
107.3.
107.3. That's right.
KOWS.org
Moo.
or something like that. They must have a website, right?
Yes, they do. Yes.
Is it KOWS.org? Something like that.
It's KOWS. I guess that's what it is. I'm not sure.
Well, these days anybody can Google it and find out.
And they
immediately.
can find out.
Yeah, so
So
that's
it's
another.
been an interesting trip, and
It has.
questions have come up from the new members of the board is what is Lolly really doing here? She doesn't do anything. But actually, the minute I got involved, I began looking around for money and began to write for grants and learned, in fact, I found one of the letters I wrote in 2004 when we were turned down by the Hearst Foundation. I had a contact with a person who worked there, and I was enthusiastic about what we had to offer. So actually, I did do some funding research. At that time, it seemed like one of the most feasible resources was not a national foundation, but a local foundation. So I did approach the, I guess it's called the Sonoma County Foundation,
Right.
only to learn that you can't just apply. They have to invite you to apply. So that was kind of discouraging.
Right.
And it seemed also at that time although what I was applying for was not a capital funding to change the building. I was just trying to get money so we could pay a coordinator because we needed one person who could pull things together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
eventually,
No, but
that
Lolly,
happened.
you were, if I was asked what you've done, I would say, well, you were one of the first presidents of the board, and then you were the first program chairman, and you have brought your wisdom and your kind of unique understanding of group process to the whole undertaking, and been invaluble in so many ways.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear. Sometimes you really don't know that about yourself.
Well, now, you might have forgotten that you went through, when you were president, it was a very difficult period.
It was a very difficult period.
We weren't getting any big grants. We weren't getting money from any large donors. And and Kit wanted a 250-seat theater with a superb acoustics done in the grand style. I mean, her vision was of a really first-rate theatrical
Well, she
facility.
grew up in New York City, had big ideas, and I don't fault her for that, except for the fact that that was pretty much beyond what we could manage.
Right.
We have since learned if we have more than 200 seats in our performance, then we'd have to pay certain kinds of money to some actors group. I've forgotten what it is. Am I right about that?
What we ended up with was a facility where you could not put more than 200 seats in the room. That's what the use permit specifies. Given the space we had, even if we were able to construct an exterior lobby, but which we can't, so we're more at 150 seats now. And but the other thing was that there was a big struggle over the future of the Arts Center, whether it should be multi-use or basically a theater. And most of us in the community, in their comments in the feasibility study, all kind of said, we need a multi-use facility because there are so many groups that want to use it that wouldn't, and in point of fact, a lot of our programs don't require 150 seats. Maybe it's a dance or it's a big party with tables.
So it's a multi-use art center, though, rather than we don't do gymnastics, for example.
Oh gosh, no.
Okay.
That's across the street.
That's across the street. We're not against gymnastics, but that's not what we do.
No, but it has turned out to be a very diverse facility for a lot of different people, and I think that's working well for the community. But I do remember that was one of the big decisions. And then there was another big rock in the road we had to stub our feet on, and that was Salmon Creek building a theater in their new school.
Yes.
And should we simply join with them? And we had to work that one out.
Yeah, well, we felt sad that we lost the children because that seemed to me when there were children involved in the building or in the programs, why parents and grandparents were all very supportive. So we have over the years had some programs that are family oriented.
Yeah.
And in May of this year, we are going to have an art exhibit in our gallery with the art of 8th grade children from Salmon Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not the first time, because when we did Remembering Harmony, a theatrical piece that used the whole campus, and it was a multimedia event. I remember that the student art was in the gallery for that show. A very wonderful show that Diane Masura's daughter Nadja brought to us.
Yeah, Nadja Masura has
Back
a
in
doctorate
2010.
in theater arts, I believe.
Oh yeah.
But it seems much more complicated than what you would expect theater arts. She apparently has a lot of technical know-how
It's
with
true.
computers and more.
The theater's become a place where projections are quite common. All sorts of digital effects are used all the time. And Nadja had brought that to us. And I've been an actor, but the old-fashioned black box kind of actor who just gets up and declaims lines, you know.
No, you were never just a declaimer. Come on. No, you bring a lot of emotion and feeling to your expressions and to your manner.
Well, anyway, I come from the theater and from singing but I'm just delighted that so many artists have come out of the woodwork in the area because the center worked as a magnet, and painters and sculptors and ceramic artists and tile setters and woodworkers have joined with us to create the center. And instead of it being top-down money from some big foundation, it really has been a grassroots
it's
undertaking.
It's a place, it's the people's place.
Yeah.
And one other group that we haven't talked about, one of our tenants, is the Occidental Community Choir. Yeah. And they're a very vital group that puts on concerts twice a year, I think at Christmas and at Easter.
That's right.
And I understand they're non-denominational. You don't have to be a Christian.
No. It's not a church choir at all. It's very secular, but that doesn't mean that they don't sing Handel's Messiah or hymns at Christmas time.
But they also include and invite their performers to write their own music, to both write the music and the lyrics.
That's a wonderful and unique tradition.
Yeah, and I think it's quite special that people can bring themselves rather than have to occupy a little niche, designated by the Bible or by somebody's interpretation of their religion.
Right. Well, the Occidental Choir performs approximately 8 to 10 concerts a year at the Arts Center, and the Redwood Arts Council, Kit Newstatter's creation, is doing a similar number of shows at the Arts Center every year, and so that part of its mandate has worked out very well. Both those groups find it comfortable. And then we do many other shows,
plus
20
the shows
or 30.
that are the exhibit of the gallery, which just opened exhibit. About 2 years ago.
And then we have the new commercial units.
That's right. That's been a big growth step when we moved beyond the confines of the place we had to acquire 3 new rooms that are just within easy walking distance. I've been attending the class that Patrick and Chris are facilitating.
Oh, you're working on a novel. That's right.
Well, yeah, I can't really call it that I'm working.
You're writing.
I'm writing.
Are you writing 500 words a day, Lolly?
Maybe. Once I start writing, I stop counting.
Yeah, I know. Who can count words? I mean.
Well, the computer does.
Oh, of course, the computers always know how many words.
That's right. When I was younger in writing, one page on a standard typewriter was 200 words to a page. But on the computer, they're about 400 to 500 words a page.
Wow. So, Lolly, looking back over your, what would be now, say, 2004 to almost 10 years of work on the Arts Center, is there some moment that you think of fondly as being
a highlight?
A highlight, iconic moment. Doesn't even have to be a highlight. It could be a low light.
Yes.
Some moment when it looked like we'd have to fold, or I don't know. Is there something you'd like to bring back up, or something that you think needs saying at this point?
The low lights have nothing to do with the organization, but the deaths of several people who were so vital to it, because I got to know them better their last months and years. So we no longer have Doris Murphy with us or Kit. And most recently, our friend Jane Stuppen, who was very vital to our writing group, the writing group that produced our booklet called The Right to Write, Everyone Has a Story.
Yeah.
Jane...
Still for sale at the Arts Center?
Yes, it is, for $10.
A mere $10?
And Jane was a very good writer and a good influence. And her loss, I think, was significant.
Yeah.
I certainly feel it, as others do too.
And we have to mention that Doris made it to her 100th birthday.
101.
Was she 101?
When
I
she
remember
died.
we had her 100th birthday
We
party.
had, and she died about age
where
101.
all 5 of the most recent Sonoma County supervisors were in attendance. Give you some idea of Doris's importance. And then we also did her memorial service, her life celebration, where there was more laughing, I think, than crying.
When her niece did a
Yeah,
presentation.
it was a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
And Doris would have liked that very much.
She would have liked it because I don't think she was a gloomy person at all. And she loved a good time.
Well, she loved watching other people have a good time, and she especially liked having activities at her home. So there was always a Labor Day and sometimes a Memorial Day event at her home, as well as the annual Christmas. Yes, and
and her autobiography was one of our first book launches.
Yes.
What's it called? I can't
Love
remember.
and Labor.
Love and Labor.
And it is the story of her life, as well as her life, mostly with her life with her husband, Joe Murphy, who, as she said, was the love of her life.
And who was a big labor leader in San Francisco.
That's right.
During the really
rough times in
rough
the 30s,
times.
yeah.
Yeah.
They were close friends to Harry Bridges, who was with the Longshoremen's Union.
It's a great book. I mean, Doris lived a very full life. And
Yeah,
she
she
can
did.
tell you what she had for dinner in 1947 at Van Esse's restaurant with,
Yeah, they used to hang out at the Iron Pot, too. And I'd read about the Iron Pot and the literary people of San Francisco when we first moved here in 1958. So I remember having meals at the Iron Pot, wondering if any of those people I saw were the literary people. And I hadn't met Doris yet, but it was interesting that our path, sometimes my path followed hers, because she had been president of an organization called the Sonoma County Council for Community Services, and somehow or other I became president. Not because I was that close to Doris at the time, I was just there. Sometimes you get to be president because you're there, not because you wanted. But it did mean that we brought private and public organizations together. And out of that group, the Family Service Agency developed because of the research that was done.
Very important.
And then out of that also there was a group that became SAY, Social Advocates for Youth, and I wrote some grants about that because there were really no services for adolescents, no mental health services for adolescents. There was an assumption going on in our county that if a kid was adolescent, he was a potential juvenile delinquent. And they had something called the delinquency prevention thing. And I just hated the fact that they automatically labeled kids that way. So Helen Rudy was, and I talked about it, and she helped change the name.
County supervisor at that time.
She was the county supervisor.
Yeah, very
and
fine
we
woman.
began to develop more resources for families who were concerned about their children.
So the Art Center really grew out of the thinking behind social services, which is that enriching a community and giving an outlet for people's artistic
Skills or
impulses
talents.
and skills is an important service to the community. Is that a fair
both
statement?
to individuals and the community at large. Yeah, I think that we ought to emphasize that mental health work most often I think is aimed at helping people feel more together, to integrate, not to feel so fragmented or anxious or frightened, and to learn how to use themselves in ways that are constructive. So both work and avocations like acting and music and art are all healthy things to do.
And all of us who have come together around this project, the Occidental Center for the Arts, have developed a great bond, and it's a wonderful culture of collaboration and trust. And you're an important part of it, Lolly. And I just want to say that the people who want to find out more about the Art Center can go to www.occidentalcenterforthearts.org